Resident Evil 1 is by far one of my favorite franchises. Being one of the best survival horror games back in the 90s, it legitimately defined what a survival horror game qualities are and how it's the king of the genre. From tank controls making it almost like a science to get the movement down, the scarce resources littered throughout the game, the looming threat of the undead and other advanced monsters to a fight, the puzzles and backtracking players will have to make and really test your mind for most of them. All of these ingredients is what makes Resident Evil fascinating for all of these years, and a lot of developers try to recreate their own survival horror game by using the same formula that Resident Evil uses. And there are some devs who try to use it in a more modern take without losing the main formula. But one current developers thought that they could do something about their own game. Therefore, in today's review, we will go over the modern indie retro horror game, Crow Country. So Crow Country is a survival horror game developed and published by SFB Games, but it was released on May 9th, 2024, and therefore set in a visual style of PlayStation 1, Resident Evil, and even as well as Silent Hill. You play as Mara, or Mara. I kept mixing this up when I was in my live streams, but you play as Mara, an investigator who is checking out the disappearance of Edward Crow, the owner of the Crow Country theme park. And when she gets there, she learns that the theme park is not what she thought it would be. It was a little bit more sinister though. I just want to go over what makes this indie game a great modern adaptation to Resident Evil. And Silent Hill. Don't forget about Silent Hill. But let's actually go ahead and talk about the overall gameplay, the sweet juiciness, right? One thing to note before even starting this game is that you can set up difficulties for your playstyle, and the game features 3 modes. There's survival, which features combat and enemies, the mode I played during my entire playthrough, and exploration, which gets rid of the enemies, and you can vibe out to eerie sounds of the haunted theme park with no combat. And there's the big motherfucker, the Murder of Crows, which is the game's hard mode, and everything is super limited resources. Enemies are way more aggressive. Now, upon entering the game, Crow Country is through and through Resident Evil with tank controls, the scarce resources and such. But one thing that sets it a bit different was the free aim control, right? When you are in combat, you would notice you can aim however you want with almost this third-person shooter-like combat, but in a Resident Evil camera, right? To go a tad bit deeper on how Crow Country plays, tank controls means you can only move in a specific way. Tank controls are basically you can walk and run in the direction you're facing, walk opposite of the direction you're facing, backwards, you can snap turn 180 to 180 degrees. For some players, this control scheme may be quite weird or unorthodox if you are not used to playing older games. Resident Evil and Silent Hill items is in this game is very sacred, and it's not as bad as some veteran survival horror fans would think, but there is no limit to how many times you can save either, unless you care about having a better score on your ending. Which then brings me up to mention is the resources, which are partially limited, so you'll have to be careful with how you shoot your enemies and still learn to pick and choose your battles. Crow Country is a very generous with items thanks to 2 specific things in the game that helps aid the players, which is the vending machines and the glass bottles. If you walk up to a vending machine, it will give you a random item, and you can only use that vending machine once. But there is also the glass bottles scattered around the game, and if you use one bullet, you can get whatever item in there. Therefore, you're trading off a bullet for an item. Like I said, ammo is very scarce in this game, so you gotta pick and choose wisely throughout the game whenever you need them. Now, these benefits doesn't really show how grueling survival horror games can be. What made Resident Evil so special is that blood pumping feeling you get when you are low on ammo. Get the next save, and you get to the next save is on the other side of the map. There's no ammo in sight, and there's a boss battle right there in front of you. So puzzles is one of the centerpiece to a survival horror game and is one of the only ways to even progress the main story in these games. Crow Country puzzle design is rather interesting yet easy. I was able to figure out most of it without needing a guide, and when I was live streaming my playthrough, I thought I was the GOAT for figuring these out on my own with no guide. But the backtracking and remembering all the information can be a bitch, I'll tell you that. There is a way to aid players to help them remember on what to do next. Is there a crow fortune teller that gives you 10 fortunes, which is basically 10 hints on what to do next at the current point of the story of where you are at. I think by the time I beat the game, I used all of my hints by the final hour of my playthrough, and most of that was from me forgetting some valuable information. Without the puzzles and without the resources, we also can't have a survival horror game without enemies. So enemies in this game are not zombies, but they're basically grotesque monsters called guests that are haunting the theme park, and by God, they ugly as hell. To combat against this, Mara uses her trusty pistol, and she obtains other weapons throughout her journey. And one thing I do love is the callback to Resident Evil, because the shotgun in Crow Country and the shotgun in Resident Evil is locked behind a puzzle in order to be able to obtain it. But which just now, it's a very powerful weapon to get as part of your arsenal. Therefore, I was getting easy one-shots, or if the mob was a bit tougher, then I was able to two-tap them, fold them in like laundry. You know, it was easy, light work. Like I said earlier, you can use free aim to help you like freely aim your guns. So by doing this, helps you place shots on headshots easier, or using to destroy traps as well. And speaking of traps, there are plenty of environmental stuff that can hurt you, like bear traps, chandeliers, poison traps, and many more. So being very aware of your surroundings plays heavy into your survival. So Crow Country's visuals has this early 3D with that sexy ass PlayStation 1 aesthetic, with the environments and characters are built in 3D, but it has this distinctive low polygon count that it gives you a huge reminiscence of the PlayStation 1 era. This creates a sense of nostalgia and a slightly blocky, charming look, really giving it that modern take to that style. One thing I did notice was that the devs had this like filter over the game that kind of gave you this like dream-like hazy type of feel, has very muted colors, you know, giving the theme park an unsettling atmosphere, but this complements the creepy story and the environment. Overall, Crow Country's art style is a unique blend of the early 3D aesthetics, horror movie atmosphere, just with a touch, just a tad bit of a touch of a JRPG influence. It delivers well on a world that's both nostalgic and as well as unsettling, perfectly fitting the game's spooky narrative. Also, the sound design was great for Crow Country, and it gives you chills just like any survival horror game should. Between the creaking floors and the dripping water and the unsettling whispers that, you know, that helps build that sense of dread. Though, you know, the wind howling and the rainfall when that happened like later on in the game, the groans of all like the guests, to be exact, just kind of just raise the tension just a tad bit, you know, keeping you a tad bit on edge. Like, it's not like a real good jump scare, but you can tell that you're just in this very eerie vibe, and it felt more like I was trying to solve a mystery, like getting a mystery machine basically. The music also was crazy. It had this like distorted melodies that adds to the mystery of the whole story. Like, I feel like it complements the story somehow in some way. Also, there are some bits where like silence is kind of like used as like a weapon in itself, keeping you on edge, like you're on the edge of your chair, but like you're so invested that you just can't stop. and also you never know what's gonna pop around the corner, or you know, whatever the hell is gonna attack you then and there. But speaking of the mystery of the story, I want to talk about the story. So moving on, we actually have, let's go a little bit over the story and the characters or just what I felt about them. So I did beat this game in one setting within 6 hours of playtime. And by God, by the time I finished playing this game, I was absolutely shocked by the ending. The ending gave me this Silent Hill vibe, super heavy. Now, this is a spoiler-free review. I don't want to spoil anything. I feel like everybody should go pick this game up right now so you can play it. If you already have beat it, I would definitely like to talk about it, probably in the comment section, but you got to talk in code. You can't spoil too much. But the ending gave me just that Silent Hill vibe, right? So like I said, I won't be going too in depth on the story, but I will talk about the lore set pieces a little bit and just see how the world building and the narrative elements come at play. So one thing Crow Country does right is the environmental storytelling, and the game, following heavy on that Silent Hill and Resident Evil vibes, is the fact that the story is told through the notes that are left in the maps, and by searching for these notes, and it can help you piece together the background info to fill players in on what's happening and outright just explain the present events as well. If a lot of you who are used to Resident Evil and Silent Hill, you can always know, like, when you pick up a note, you should probably read it because it can actually explain, kind of give you some, background information, or sometimes it's even a hint of what's to come next if you were already experiencing like this creature or this person. A lot of hints and a lot of lore is put into those notes, so definitely make sure you read it. So you take on the control of Mara Forrest, a special agent tasked with investigating the abandoned Crow Country amusement park on the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia. The park was abruptly shut down 2 years prior, and the founder, Edward Crow, vanished without a trace. As Mara explores that theme park, she discovers that, like I said, the park is overrun by twisted creatures that they're referred to as guests. These are not monsters from any otherworldly places, but rather former park visitors, actually, who were somehow transformed. The story in Crow Country is shrouded in overall mystery. It had me stuck on the edge of my ass for 6 hours. I needed to know what happened next and how to solve this entire thing. It explores themes of like ambition, obsession, the consequences of being reckless. Like, it hits all the nails for that storytelling just in 6 hours. The story had me absolutely hooked for this mini-sized game of only 6 hours, and each hour grabbed me and hooked me in more and more. My detective brain was on absolute 10. Like, it was going off banger after banger, right? I was just like, dude, I'm figuring this stuff out. I'm piecing together. I sit there, got a clipboard and everything. I'm like, this happened here, and oh man, just trying to piece together the story during the stream. I'm sitting here like, I don't need no damn sleep. I need to figure out what happens next. But Mara's character development is absolutely crazy. If you know, you know. If you beat the game, you know what I mean. But overall, I want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of Crow Country. So, pros, we have a very intriguing story, right? The entire story is shrouded in overall mystery. Like I said earlier, it has the themes of ambition, the obsession, and consequences that keeps you engaged. It kept my ass engaged, I'll tell you that. Secondly, we have the exploration and discovery side of things. This is a fine-tuned point of like where you know, like, this is a survival horror game. If it's gonna pay homage to the old greats, you got to do it right. The environmental storytelling and pretty much encourages players to dive even deeper, look for those notes, and try to uncover the clues and everything. Like, I felt like I was a detective myself. And last but not least is the overall atmosphere, right? When you're playing this game from beginning to end, it's just, you feel this sense of just dread that weighs on your shoulders. Like, the abandoned amusement park creates this suspense and unsettling. Like, it's a nice mix of both, kind of using that retro inspired aesthetic to really get your horror experience like really up there. Because games, I don't know if some people haven't played most games on the PlayStation 1, but some, because of the polygons and stuff like that, things are a lot scarier on games like on Nintendo 64 or PlayStation 1. Like, those polygons, it was a lot scarier now. Like, things look way too real, and it kind of like really, you don't get that sense of just like, what the fuck am I looking at? But let's talk a little about the cons. So limited combat is one of my things that I want to go a little bit of explanation on that one. The game does feel like it focuses more on exploration and the atmosphere than the encounters when it comes to combat. You know, most games, especially as the Resident Evil games got higher and higher, and even more other survival horror games, when you encounter a like a monster or something of that nature, it should have, especially some of these like boss battles and stuff, like it doesn't really get that sense of like, oh shit, like I need an oh shit moment. And pretty much you like, there's not too much strategy to some of them. Like in most times, like in Resident Evil, you had to have a strategy to beat bosses. In Silent Hill, like there was some form of a gimmick, or you just had to outmaneuver. Most of the bosses and enemies I encountered in this game, they weren't really difficult, or you know, didn't really get you that adrenaline going when you're in combat. It was just like, oh, point, shoot, boom, boom. It felt, like I said, the game leaned more heavy into the story, which I'm not bitching about that either. Now, this is a little bit not much of a con for me, but a con for some other people. It does have a potentially repetitive gameplay loop. So depending on how that loop goes, you know, some people may not like the backtracking and the puzzle solving, and after you do it so many times, that might be a bit repetitive. So if you are somebody who prefers more fast-paced type of horror games, or you're fast-paced in your survival horror games, then going back to the old days may not be too fun for you, because I can tell that some people might get a little bit of annoyed, especially with the backtracking. And my last con, and the game did come out in May, so I feel like this game could be receiving more love, so hopefully I can use my voice to give more love to Crow Country and show it out to other players. Keep in mind, Crow Country only has, like, the pricing of Crow Country, if I actually pull it up right now, it is sitting at not even $18 right now on Steam. It is technically $20 retail price. They knocked $3 whole ass dollars off for this game. And for the amount of experience that I received in 6 hours for $20, this was absolutely amazing. So that's the only thing I say that's hurting, and like it needs way more love, way more attention. But let's wrap it up real quick. So this review was super fun to make, and I had a very fun time playing Crow Country. And I pretty much can highlight Crow Country as a horror game that is inspired by the classics like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. It features tank controls, scarce resources, and puzzles, but with a modern twist of free aiming and difficulty modes. You also get the unique visual blend with the early 3D with that dreamlike haze as well. You know, that creepy atmosphere, the mysterious story that you're trying to unfold with the exploration, but hints at kind of like a Silent Hill-esque twist. I thoroughly enjoyed my 6-hour experience. I'm praising the story. The character development was pretty good, and the exploration was spectacular, right? However, I will mention some potential drawbacks, like I said, the limited combat. Most fights were fairly easy to deal with, and no monsters really gave me any oh shit moments, or like get out and dodge. Like I didn't feel any fear at all, whether it's intended fear or like, oh shit, I'm gonna shit myself. But I went this entire game without dying at all, and that's a first for me. Like, I didn't die at all. Like I got a 6-hour live stream on the channel. I don't think I died not a single time. Like, yes, I received damage and stuff, but I was able to heal myself. So overall, this sense of difficulty probably needs to go, because like I said, I played on your standard, difficulty. But overall, it seems Crow Country is a successful homage to classical survival horror games with a modern touch. And if you like other indie games, then I have this video right here for you. Check it out in the card here below. Other than that, stay safe out there. And it's been your host, KSDTV, here at Chaotic Inc., signing out. Peace.